we're good.
Thank you. Okay, I call the Township Council meeting Monday, January 11th to order. Confirmation agenda that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for the January 11th, 2021 Council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? I have Councillor Faulkner and seconder is Councillor Heffer. All in favor? Oh, I gotta hand it over to Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So that'll be a recorded vote. So Deputy Reeve-Sight.
Yes.
Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer. Councillor Van Hitterson.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 7-0.
thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Not seeing or hearing anyone, we shall move on. Public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the items of business on the agenda, 2 minutes per person. Carson, is there anyone out there flashing?
Yep, there are a couple members of the public here if anyone would want to speak up now.
And I'll let you see that. I can't see that. Not hearing of any. We shall move on. Number 5, the consent agenda. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts consent items 5.1.1 to 5.1.3. And further, the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.4 to 5.3.1 for information purposes. Do I have a mover? I have Anita, Councillor Hitterson, and seconder is Councillor Heffer. Any questions, comments, or concerns before we call the motion? Afraid to speak up? Go ahead, Deputy Reeve-Sight.
Just wanted to make because of the correspondence that's requested from the municipality of Morris Termby regarding the minor variance. I just want to make sure that we are making note or comment to them about still with the connect. There's no connections, no additional connections. A comment that we've made on other minor variance and any other zoning stuff that we've talked about that type of stuff.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve. Can that be added to the letter we send back?
Through Your Worship. So yeah, Council has provided us previous direction to continue to provide those comments on applications in which we are circulated in. So we will provide those comments in time for the Committee of Adjustment meeting for Morris Turnberry tomorrow.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Again, don't be afraid to speak up. I can't see all the pictures on the screen here. Go ahead,
yeah, Chris.
Go ahead.
Chris.
Go ahead, Palmer. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, this minor variance of MTs is right across the road from me and from our house, and it has nothing to do with North Huron at all. So, yeah, it should be good to go from our standpoint. I mean, from our township standpoint.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything on the agenda there? Not seeing anything. Carson, do you want to take over?
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
Deputy Reeve-Sight. And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
6.1 zoning bylaw amendment, file number Z02-2020. Location, part block E, register plan 173 as in 22R1777, part 3 and 4, subsection 692, Queen Street, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron. The applicant owner is Gary Rutledge, and we're going to have a presentation from county planner. I believe that's Monica, if you want to step in now.
Thank you very much, Bree Bailey. Good evening, Council. This is an application for zoning bylaw amendment. The purpose of the application is for the construction of a 4-unit residential building. The slide that's on your screen now shows this application file number Z0420. We can move on to the next slide. So this is an application for zoning bylaw amendment to permit a 4-unit residential building. The as stated by the Reeve is listed there on your screen, and this is file number Z0420. So we can go to the next slide. So in this slide, you can see the subject property. It's located adjacent to Queen Street in Blythe. It's located on the north end of town. The current zoning of the property is R1, residential low density, and the purpose of this rezoning is to change to R2, residential medium density, to permit the 4-unit residential dwelling. The property is designated residential in the township's official plan. And in reviewing this application with view to the policies of the township's official plan, our department noted that the plan encourages a broad mix of quality housing choices, both for rent and sufficient supply in variety in type, cost, and affordability, and location to meet the needs of the community. And in section 6431 of the township's official plan, it sets out the goals for residential designations within primary settlement areas such as Blythe. Being a village that has water and sewer connections available, it's considered a primary settlement area. And these areas, the official plan encourages all housing types and prices to satisfy the varying housing needs and anticipate the existing and anticipated needs of the community. And it also encourages a mixing of densities through the integration of new structures in older residential areas. So in reviewing these policies, the planning department is prepared to recommend that this application for zoning bylaw amendment be about. And we would note that because it is a 4-unit residential dwelling, it will be subject to site plan control. It will address issues such as building design, landscaping, parking, and entrances and exits. So maybe move on to the last couple of slides. This on a slide is just a photo taken when I visited the property for my site inspection. So you can see the residential context of the area and get a bit of an idea of the size of the property. And the final slide, this is a copy of a rough idea of a site plan for the property. So you can see the proposal is to provide parking on the street side of the property, and each of the units well, 3 of the 4 units would have their own concrete patios out the side of the building. And depending on how the units are divided up, those patios might also be shared. So those would be my overall comments. The department's recommendation is for approval. In reviewing this application, there were no neighbor objections or staff or agency objections filed for this application. And this being the public meeting, we should be open to potentially hearing some comments from the public tonight. But barring any big issues being raised, it would be our department's recommendation that this application for rezoning be approved. So those would be my comments for now.
Thank you, Monica. 6.1.2, opportunity for the comment for the applicant and or agent. Would anybody like to speak on the behalf? Gary, you out there? And again, I can't see, so speak up. Okay, not hearing any. We'll move on to 6.1.3, This is an opportunity for comments by others in attendance. Anybody that wants to talk for or against the proposal, now is your time to speak. And again, I'm not hearing or 6.1.4 is the opportunity and questions and comments from council members. Council members, questions, concerns? Not seeing any, I would just like to say to Gary, thank you very much for coming to North Huron and for all you've done to help us build housing in our small community, because it is desperately needed. Thank you. Anyone else? No, okay.
I do,
6.1.
Mr. Reeve, this is Kevin.
Go ahead, Kevin.
It's just it really has nothing to do with the property we're talking here, but I just maybe would like to ask Monica on the just for my own knowledge, would it be as simple a policy as this variance if you were going to go to the next level of density? Is it just merely a matter of coming and getting the variance done?
Yeah, zoning bylaw amendment for residential zones are residential low density, which could include single detached or semi-detached. When you move up to 3 or 4 units, that's when you get into the medium density. And then I think once you get up to 6 or more units, that's when you get into residential high density. And the considerations are a little different, and the policies are outlined slightly differently in the official plan. But any residential designated area, law amendment for any one of those zones, and the review that we would take with residential include that's when you get into the number of units vis-a-vis the acreage appropriate, the number of acreage appropriate entrance into the local roads. So as you move up higher in density, then we look for those potential conflict issues. And medium density and high density are both subject to site plan control, which also get into some of the finer details of siting and landscaping and the layout of the property.
Okay, thank you, Monica. It was just that not only our own municipality, but as I drive through all the other ones, that I just noticed the preferred building footprint now in this year has been the fourplexes and that kind of structure. So I just was wondering whether there was a big leap in what you had to go through to get a higher density a project approved. And I thank you for answering that for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks. Anyone else? Again, please. Not hearing or seeing of anyone. We're going to go to 6.1.5, zoning bylaw procedural following public meeting. This is a public meeting of the council of the township of North Huron. Thus, a decision of council may or may not be made at this evening. If the bylaw is passed by council, the clerk is required to send notice of the passing of the bylaw to all persons and agencies notified of this public meeting. There is a 20-day objection period from the time of the notice of passing of the bylaw has been mailed to the first class post, where then submissions and letters of objection or support in respect to the passing of the bylaw will be received by the clerk. Objection is received, an appeal is lodged with the local planning appeal tribunal, and at that point the township no longer has any control over the time factor involved. If council does not pass the bylaw, the applicant may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal. If the bylaw is passed and no objections are received within the objection period, the clerk certifies that the bylaw is in force and of effect as of the date of its passing, and notice is forwarded to the Huron County Planning and Development Department. 6.1.6 summary comments and recommendations from the Huron County Planner and Development Department. Monica?
So the planning department's recommendation is that this application for zoning bylaw amendment be approved.
Thank you. 6.1.7 decision of council and affect the comments received from the council's decision. that the council of the township of North Huron hereby approves the zoning bylaw amendment file Z04-20 as it applies to Part Block E Registered Plan 173 as in 22R1777, Part 3 and 4, subs to 692 Queen Street, Blythe Ward, Township. That for the zoning bylaw amendment file Z04.
That's your second motion, Reeve Bailey.
Oh, I appreciate you slowing me down there. Carson, do it over. I have Paul. Do I have a seconder? I have Christopher. It's your turn, Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Heifer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Palmer, Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sipe, Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. For the zoning bylaw amendment file Z04-20 as it applies to Part Block E Registered Plan 173 as in 22R1777, Part 3 and 4, sub 692 Queen Street, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron. Recommendations from the chart. Monica, can you give us a recommendation, please?
Since there were no comments received from the public, recommend 2A, and also there were no agency or staff comments, so that would be 2B.
What was the second one, Monica? I didn't hear it.
Or staff comments. So since no agency comments were received on this application, public, there was no effect on the decision.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a mover? Can you take the screen down, Carson? Thank you. Sorry, Monica, if I cut you off there. Do I have a move?
I'll move that. Reeve
I
Bailey.
have movements, and I have Anita seconding. Any last questions, comments, or concerns?
Thank you. So Monica's video feed is just lagging, so she sounds a little behind here. That's why.
Okay, she's forgiven. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you, Carson.
So your motion on the floor is that for the zoning bylaw amendment file Z0420 as it applies to Part Block E Registered Plan 173 as in 22R 1777 Parts 3 and 4, 692 Queen Street, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron. No public comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision, and no agency comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision. So Councillor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sipe, Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heifer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
No effect on the decision.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to 7.1.1, Clerk's Department. We have 2021-03 Site Plan Control Agreement with Gary Rutledge / Rutledge Holdings Limited. Did you want to speak to this? Would someone like to speak to this?
I can speak to this, Reeve.
One of our staff?
Yeah, so that would be Monica's application. So if she wants to speak to that now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Reeve, and Carson as well. I believe, Carson, you would have a presentation from me on this one as well. This is an application for site plan control. And through site plan control, we address issues such as lot grading and drainage, landscaping, parking, entrances and exits. So this first slide is showing us that this is an application for Rutling Holdings Limited, Gary Rutledge, and the address of the subject property is 683 Gloria Street, which is Block 8 in the new Rutledge subdivision. We can go to the next slide. So this is proposing a 4-unit multiple attached dwelling building, also known as a quadruplex. So this is 4 units side by side townhouse style. The zoning is R2-18 for Block 8, which is a zone that was passed at the time of the creation of the plan of subdivision to recognize reduced lot depth and increase lot coverage. So the proposed site plan doesn't have any variances other than are already built into the R2-18 zone. The designation in the official plan is residential. This lot is fronting on Gloria Street in the new subdivision. When this application was submitted, we received drawings for the site plan, and those were reviewed by the site plan review committee. There were some issues identified by Public Works, but those were resolved with the applicant. And so at the time of tonight's presentation, there are no objections from staff, and the planning department is prepared to recommend approval of the site plan and to recommend that the township enter into an agreement with the developer for the development of the subject lands in keeping with the site plan provided. I think my last couple of slides will show the subject property. So this is the property fronting on Gloria Street. So you can see it lends itself to 4 units side by side townhouse style. And I believe the last slide in my presentation will show you an image of the site plan itself. So too much detail on there for you to be able to make that out, but that's the basic layout of the 4 units with garages in paired up in the center for each of the 2 units side by side. And that shows you the orientation of the building on the subject property. This is how reviewed with reference to the zoning bylaw provisions and reviewed by staff. And at this point, staff and the planning department are prepared to recommend approval of this site plan. So those would be my comments for now.
Thank you very much, Monica. I think I'm going to read the bylaw, get a mover and seconder, and then I'll open it up to the floor for questions. This would be location 683 Gloria Street, Block 8, Rutledge Subdivision, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron, subs to RP 22M-13. Applicant owner Gary Rutling Holding Limited. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby approves the Rutling Holding Limited proposed development as applies to 683 Gloria Street, Block 8, Rutledge Subdivision, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron, subs to RP 22M-13. And further, the Council deems the adoption of the bylaw number 03-2021 to be time sensitive and approves an exemption to the section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw, allowing for bylaw number 03-2021 to be adopted at the January 11th, 2021 regular meeting. Do I have a mover?
Rick.
I have Rick moving it. I have Kevin seconding it. I'm going to open it up to questions or comments now. Go ahead, Deputy Reeve Site.
Yes, Reeve Bailey, thank you. Monica, my question is through the Reeve to you as it relates to the site plan. I know where the property is, and the way I envision this property is the way it backs onto another property that's existing there. So it backs onto an existing residential property. Is there? I couldn't make out in the plan of in the site plan. Is there any fencing or buffer or anything required or recommended that the planner, the developer, is doing on the back end of that property, so there's no concerns with the adjacent residential property?
Okay, that's a good question. And I note that the developer is on the call, so I would invite him to speak up and speak to this. But normally when medium density residential located adjacent to lower density, there is a requirement for a fence. So let me just check the plan, unless Gary's able to jump in and confirm that there is a fence there.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, Gary, thank you.
So with that property line at the rear, there are numerous trees along there, and actually part of the adjacent property, the landowner, part of the shed is actually on the lot line. So what we are proposing to do is, we weren't too sure how to tackle the buffer. Previously, we had put tree line along there, shrubs, instead of a fence, and we may still do that if council requires us to do that. But I'm in constant contact with the adjacent owner, and our plan is to work something out. She may not want a fence, so that's what we're trying to decide how to go forward with it. And I don't know if she wants the big trees knocked down either. So there's those hurdles we're working through. That's why we didn't put anything on the site plan at this stage.
Thank you, Gary. Any other questions, comments, or concerns from councilors? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, this was for through your reeve to Monica. Has have we ever dealt with the severance problem with the shed on that property through council? Like, I mean, have we dealt with that variance?
Sorry, I was checking out the site plan and I had to switch screens quickly there. If there is an issue with a neighboring building encroaching on property, that is not all that uncommon. It does happen from time to time. We can't really address encroaching on somebody else's property through zoning. All we can do is recognize an existing situation really through the provisions of the zoning bylaw that exists to recognize legal non-complying buildings. So if a building was legally established prior to the date of passing of the bylaw and it doesn't meet the required setbacks, then it is recognized and considered legal. But in terms of it being on someone else's property, the only way that we could correct that would be through a severance and convey more property over to that landowner. And in this case, I don't think that's something that we would recommend.
Okay, that was my question, whether because the property had just been sold within the last few years, whether that was dealt with at that severance time or not. I don't remember coming. Wouldn't that have been then when the property was surveyed?
When a property can be sold and changed hands, even if it does have a title issue like that, an encroaching issue, it is very common for garages or sheds to encroach on neighboring properties, and they can change hands even though they might not be 100% on their own property.
Okay, I was just wanting to clarify that because the council's aware that we've had to in different cases build 15 foot high fences because of property problems. So I just didn't want to get into that down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Deputy Reeve Site.
Yes, Reeve, just a question. So I understand there's currently right now in the recommendation, there is no requirement, according to what I'm seeing or hearing, there's no requirement for any fences built or tree lines or buffer zones to be put in. However, what Gary did mention is he's in constant contact with the adjacent landowner. I'm just wondering, is the site plan committee or the management team going to be considered, can be considered in the communication of that, just so that we understand as, I just don't want to find out in 6 months or whatever that there's a big deal and now we've got something's got to come back to council to require something to happen, even though we haven't required it as of right now. So I'm concerned is the fact that something, if they're both parties are in agreement, I'm happy, but what I don't want to happen is in 6 months now come back and say we can't, there couldn't be an agreement made and now council's got to deal with some issue. That's all so I just want to know if the expectation is that staff are going to be kept in line to understand if there is any conflict going forward.
Monica?
If site plan approved tonight, and the agreement is signed tonight without a requirement for a planting strip or a fence, then that will the applicant is required to follow. I was just, while the question was being asked, trying to quickly refer to the zoning bylaw, because if the zoning bylaw requires a fence, then it would be required for the applicant to be in compliance with the zoning. So I was just checking that, but I wasn't able to get my eyeballs on that quite quickly enough. So I think the answer would be, if it's an issue, then the recommendation would be deferral to allow the site plan to be amended to show either a planting or a fence, since that's the tool that the township has to enforce development standards. Not an issue, then it could be passed tonight with the explanation that the developer has provided.
Thank you, Monica. So we do have a motion on the floor, but we have comments that may be contrary to what the motion is on the floor. I do have movers. So unless there's, go ahead, Chris, you have your hand up.
Yes, through you, Reeve, to Monica. I'm a bit surprised that the homeowner to the west, they didn't give any comment at all or concerns?
Site plans are circulated for neighboring comments, so those are been looked at the time of the subdivision development, if there were any. As the stated, he has been in contact with that neighbor, and so it was that there hasn't been anything raised by the neighbor. So I last spoke, I've had a chance to bring up the township's zoning requirement. So on lands that are zoned for multiple dwellings, where they abut lands zoned or used for single detached dwellings, a planting strip is required. So if council was concerned about this issue, we could require the site plan to be amended to show more detail about what will be provided in terms of a natural planting strip. The requirement of that is such a planting strip shall have an ultimate width of 1.5 meters. So that is something that the developer is required to provide in order to comply with the provisions of the zoning bylaw.
I just want to put a few comments out there and then hear back from the counselor. So, spoken with his neighbors. The Monica has said that they had the preliminaries and everybody had a chance to speak up, talk to it, or have concerns, and there were none, I believe. And this subdivision has been going on for quite some time. So I think I would recommend that we pass the motion as is. If council does not agree with that, I would like to hear from them now. And I'm basing on this on what I just heard. Deputy Reeve Sykes, go ahead.
What I'm hearing is it's just because it's not on the site plan, it's a requirement based on the zoning bylaw. So if I'm okay with the approving the bylaw as it reads, the fact that it's not on the site plan is the only fact is that it's not on the site plan, but it's still a requirement under the zoning bylaw. So at the end of the day, as long as the zoning bylaw is adhered to, I am happy with the development. I'm just wanting to make sure that is the requirement. If the requirement is to have whatever parts of the zoning bylaw, then that's what we're requiring to do. We're not making any exemption from the zoning bylaw for him not to do what is on the bylaw. From what I'm hearing, That's what I'm hearing. So I'm hearing he's got to comply with the bylaw. So I'm happy with the motion as it reads in the sense of that.
And I have the same understanding as Deputy Reeve Sykes. Anyone else? Not seeing any. I'm going to hand it over to Carson for a vote.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves the Rutland Holdings Limited proposed development as it applies to 683 Gloria Street, Block 8, Rutledge Subdivision, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron, Registered Plan 22M13. And further, that Council deems the adoption of bylaw number 3, 2021 to be time sensitive and approves an exception to section 19.1 of the procedure bylaw, allowing for bylaw number 03, 2021 to be adopted at the January 11th, 2021 regular meeting. So this will be a recorded vote. So Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Syke,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum, and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to 7.1.2, the 2021-01-2021 Annual Accessibility Plan and the 2021 Multi-Year Accessibility Plan Update. On this one, because this has come up before over the front of the town hall, I would like to have a discussion before I have a mover and a seconder to just see which way the wind's blowing with this, rather than have a mover and seconder and have. So could
So
I
Reeve
have?
Bailey, I
Yes.
just want to clarify that this is not to do with the accessible ramp.
Oh, you just take the fun out of everything, don't you?
But-
Okay. In that
but I can
case,
cer-
I'm going. In that case, I'm going to ask for a mover. I have Mrs. Van Hittersum, and seconder is Councillor Faulkner. Questions or comments? Did you have your hand up, Kevin? No. I have Deputy Reeve Syke. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make comment as this is a Huron County plan that, and it was mentioned last year that it doesn't give. There's not a lot of meat to the plan as it relates to how North Huron is affected by this plan. Like it doesn't provide an appendix or anything as to show how North Huron is going to be implemented by this plan. So I know that has been asked in the past about a more detailed plan as it relates to North Huron and how that plan should be incorporated into that Huron County plan. So that if somebody looks to that accessibility plan from North Huron and looks on the Huron County website, they understand where North Huron is going as it relates to accessibility. If you look at that plan today, there's no way anybody would know what's going on in North Huron, and then they would have to ask the clerk or the CAO, and then there's a lot of back and forth as it relates to how this happens. So my comment would be that either staff provide or Huron County be notified that, in the future, we would like to see some type of North Huron appendix, something indicating that gives it some teeth as to showing that we can look at it on an annual basis to see where we are at when it comes to accessibility.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Syke. I'm going to hand it over to CAO Evans, and I'm not putting you on the spot, Dwayne. Can we get a detailed report or start something to follow up with the recommendation from Deputy Reeve Syke?
So Reeve Bailey, if I could jump in here.
So let's put it over to Carson then.
So just for context purposes, so the township participates in the development of these plans annually through the Accessibility Advisory Committee Working Group. Myself, as the clerk, sits on that for North Huron, and we provide our feedback on the plans. The one thing you'll note in the plan this year, it says, looking for 2021, for basically next year's plan, what you'll see is a schedule of local accessibility projects, achievements, and proposed activities of each lower tier municipality. So exactly what Deputy Reeve Syke was looking for. we actually raised at the working group meetings. And so for the next year's plan, that's what you'll find, because exactly what was raised. Basically, we adopted a similar plan to this last year, and then ultimately it's the county's plan, but we're jointly involved in it. And then it sits on the shelf in North Huron. It's not a great document for what we're doing. So the intention is for next year, what you'll see in these plans is every lower tier municipality will have a schedule, and in that schedule it'll say, here's what we're working on for accessibility projects. Here's the achievements we've had in this fiscal year. Here's what were our proposed activities that we can continue on. So again, it allows us to do some accessibility planning, and for us to be for every member of the public to see what each municipality is doing, which hasn't necessarily been the case in the past. So I guess long story short, the request that Deputy Reef Site has made is something that we're already working on, and you can expect that in next year's plan when I present it to council in January of 2022.
If I could just follow up with that. Like to do that, or that's done internally through our staff?
Through your worship, I only caught part of that because your video was cutting out. So I just heard the tail end of what you were asking there.
I was wondering if that's handled internally with staff, or there's going to be a type of committee set up involving public for that.
Yep. So the committees are already there. The structure is already there. It's just as part of this process next year, the Huron County Accessibility Advisory Committee will be taking in more feedback and more input from the lower tier municipalities in the development of those schedules. So what you'll see and whether it's SMT or just myself, you'll see a concentrated summary of here is what North Huron has done in the year as an update so that the public is aware. And by no means is this flushed out fully right now, but the working group that I sit on is certainly looking at structure, process. So whether that comes to the lower tier councils for input first, all those things are certainly up for discussion right now, and nothing's set in stone. But I guess the takeaway here is that this is an initiative that you will see next year in some way, shape, or form. But what it looks like is not set by any means at this point.
Thank you kindly. Councillor Heffer, not?
I had my hands crossed here.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought I seen you waving a little earlier. Okay. Okay.
Chris?
I believe I have a
Chris,
go ahead, Mr. Palmer.
comment? Yeah.
Mhm.
Do the store owners and affect churches, affected establishments, do they have the requirements? Is it all like, are they able to move along and slowly make the changes that are required?
So through your worship to Councillor Palmer, so the Huron County Accessibility Advisory Committee has a number of subcommittees, and these committees work with whether it's a review committee of municipal buildings or whether it's education for businesses, and they're doing more and more efforts to get here's what your requirements are out there. It is obviously a work in process, and I know that the Huron County Accessibility Advisory Committee has worked with both of our BIAs in order to make sure that they are aware of the requirements that are coming down the pipeline. Whether they can complete those at this time, I guess, is contingent on the business. But what you'll have seen in the plan is they had a number of award winners for businesses who have made accessible changes in 2020, and you'll have noted that the large majority of them are from North Huron, which is a good sign. So,
Thank you, Carson. So not seeing anyone else, I believe I do have a mover and seconder on this, so I'm going to hand it over to Carson to call the roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the clerk dated January 11th, 2021 regarding the 2021 Annual Accessibility Plan and 2021 Multi-Year Accessibility Plan update for information purposes. And further, that Council approves and adopts the 2021 Annual Accessibility Plan and the 2021 Multi-Year Accessibility Plan update as required under the AODA. And further, that Council authorizes staff to post the 2021 Annual Accessibility Plan and 2021 Multi-Year Accessibility Plan update on the Township of North Huron website as directed in the Integrated Accessibility Standards under the AODA. So this will be a recorded vote. So Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeves Sype, Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 7-0.
thank you. We have the Finance Department now, 7.2.1, which is the 2021-02 Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, CWWF for short, Transfer Payment Agreement Amendment Number 3. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report from the Director of Finance dated January 11th, 2021 for information purposes. And further, the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, CWWF for short, Transfer Payment Agreement Amendment Number 3. And further, the Council directs the clerk to prepare a bylaw for the February 1st, 2021 Council meeting to authorize the clerk and Reeve to sign on behalf of Council Amendment Number 3 to the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund Transfer Payment Agreement. I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder before we talk about this. Do I have a mover? I have Paul moving. Seconder. I don't have a
Deputy Reeve
second.
will second it.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Reeves, seconds. Okay, let's open it up. First of all, would the treasurer like to talk?
Yes, thank you, Reeve Bailey. So as outlined in my report, this is an wastewater fund transfer payment agreement, and the original agreement was $320,000, and we've spent right around $305,000. So there's about $15,000 left to spend, and we ran into a few snags late in March, of course, because of COVID. So that's why the amendment was requested. So this amendment will allow the last $15,000 to be spent. And some of the last few things we're working on is to get all the data from the that was generated by the master plan uploaded into our asset management software. So we have some small pieces left to do, and this amendment will allow us to get those completed. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much. Questions for Donna? I am not seeing any. So I'm going to hand it over to Carson to call the vote.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Finance dated January 11th, 2021 for information purposes. And further, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund Transfer Payment Agreement Amendment Number 3. And further, that Council directs the clerk to prepare a bylaw for the February 1st, 2021 Council meeting to authorize the Reeve clerk to sign on behalf of Council Amendment Number 3 to the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund Transfer Payment Agreement. So this will be a recorded vote. So Deputy Reeve Sype.
Yes.
Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 7-0.
thank you. Recreation Community Services, 2021-01 request for support Columbus Center. I'm going to read the motion. I'm going to get the.
So, Your
Vicky,
Worship, if I can just jump in here. So the motion as it reads now, basically, staff are seeking direction from council. So you may want to have the Director of Recreation speak to this one first, and then have your discussion, and then based on that direction, we'll craft a motion based on the direction council wants to go.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, Vicky, where are you out there?
I'm here, Your Worship. So, good evening, Council. So before Council this evening, we have a report regarding the Wingham Columbus Center and basically the impact COVID-19 has had on their operations. As everyone knows, the Wingham Columbus Center is owned by the township and is operated by the nonprofit organization known as the Wingham Columbus Center, which is kind of similar to the Belgrade Community Center, as well as the Blythe Festival. In discussing this evening, there's an important thing I wanted to point out here and want everyone to realize is that when we're talking about the Wingham Columbus Center and the Knights of Columbus, they are actually two separate entities. The Wingham Columbus Center is run by a board of directors, and the Knights of Columbus, again, as a separate entity. They do have separate financials and accounting for the operations of the center and the Knights themselves. We did have Sue Doik here this evening, but she was having problems with, she couldn't hear. She tried logging in like everyone else was having problems logging in, but for some reason she could not hear what council was trying to say or was saying, and she's logged in a couple times in and out and wasn't able to participate. We do have the Wingham Columbus Center's accountant with us this evening in case there's a question that I can't answer just going forward. So again, the center is used or is leased from the township. The lease agreement requires that the Columbus Center pay for the utility costs and contribute toward the annual operating deficit, the overall operating deficit of the North Huron West Cast complex. And the lease agreement also indicates that the Knights of Columbus are required to make an annual payment towards their pledge for the construction of the center. I would like to note, though, that pledge is not part of this report in needing support or anything. In fact, the Knights have already paid their pledge for 2020. So just kind of moving forward then, what we're really discussing this evening is the Wingham Columbus Center's ability to generate revenue and cover costs. In a non-COVID year, the facility hosts community events and banquets, buck and does weddings, and corporate Christmas parties, for example. And that generates the revenue that they're able to use to contribute their payments for their lease agreement. But similar to the recreation facilities, this year due to COVID-19, the province has imposed gathering restrictions and capacity limitations on our facilities. And if you recall, there were also times when our facilities were closed. Those same restrictions and limitations were imposed on the Knights of Columbus Center. So although the center, similar to us, was able to have a staff person in it and everything, they were not able to operate fully. This has had a serious impact on the center's ability to generate revenue to meet their financial obligation for the second part of this year. The Wingham Columbus Center was able to, they did take measures to lower their operational costs at the center, which is outlined in the report, just to reduce energy consumption and things like that. They also organized additional meal events, like they had fish fries, but they also added some other events in there too to try to bring in more revenue. But again, all those things were by pickup only because they couldn't have anyone come in and sit down and have a meal that day. So that had an effect as well on them. They did seek some funding from the government, and some of which they were successful in receiving and things. So that was that funding was used to basically meet the first installment of this year's lease payments, and which were made in June. They have applied for additional funding, but there's nothing has come through. No communications at all, whether or not they received it or didn't receive it or what's going on. So the center has asked for the township's support during this difficult time. As council knows, we're all experiencing difficulties in revenue generation, from our own services and things. They are the board of directors has indicated they're willing to meet with, council representatives to discuss the matter further if it's required. Councillor Palmer and I did meet with them just before Christmas to discuss their request and, just kind of have a better understanding of where they were coming from. As indicated in the report, there are some other lease spaces that we do support township, which council may want to consider that we didn't reduce support to the Blythe Festival or to the Belgrade Community Center, even though neither were able to operate this year. In the fall this year, the township also received approximately $138,000 in funding from the province to offset expenses and loss of revenue that resulted from COVID-19. We have approximately $23,098 left remaining in that funding. If the township were to forgive the second installment of this lease agreement, it would be considered a loss of revenue on the township's part, and could be allocated toward that or from that funding. So since it's a lease facility, it's very similar to, hockey. We didn't have the rentals for hockey and they weren't paying and things, so it's still considered loss of revenue. So that's something for council to consider. There has been discussion about whether or not, deferring payments was a possibility. It is a possibility, but as council knows, we are in lockdown, and the premier is making an announcement tomorrow with respect to additional restrictions that's going to be in place. So I'm not sure if deferring a payment is actually going to be an option. In terms of, we don't know when they're going to be able to generate the revenue to repay it. So in terms of other groups coming forward and asking for support, this particular group, again, it has to deal with their use of our facilities, again, similar to Blythe and Belgrade. So it's not the same as if, say, a Lions Club or Legion was to come forward. If council was to give some kind of consideration here, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's funds leaving, like a check being written and going toward an organization or anything like this. This has to do with the operations of our own facilities. The other thing I just wanted to point out is that the Wingham Columbus Center does play an important role in the community. It is like, it's a community center, a community hub. They do a lot of things in the community and support different community initiatives, including the nutritional programs at the local schools, and providing meals to isolated seniors, and donating to community projects. I worry that, if they were to cease operation, that we could be faced with having to cover that operational cost of the center itself next door, which would be
would be extreme for us to have to do, because then we'd have to have more programming and involvement over there, cleaning and whatnot. So I'd just like council to give some consideration tonight to maybe how we can work with them and help them during this difficult time.
Very much for that, Vicky. You made a mistake there. You said that Councillor Palmer and you had met with the Knights. I believe you meant to say your CAO and you had met with them.
No.
No, through to you, your worship. No, Councillor Palmer and I, it's actually the board of directors and Knights of Columbus that we met with, but Councillor Palmer and I are the ones who council appointed to be the liaisons with the agreement for the Columbus Center. So we were the ones that were responsible for negotiating that agreement back in 2019 and identified as their contacts for the township.
Oh, I didn't realize that took place. I thought you guys, I remember that Councillor Palmer was part of the negotiations. I didn't realize he was our liaison between that group and ourselves. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's open it up to council. Have a conversation, or would you like the motion read? So we're sitting in a, go ahead, Deputy Reeves, Sites, followed by Councillor Faulkner.
So Vicky, I just want to add, I think I heard it, but in this particular case, the request that's being asked for would be different than the requests that are being asked from the Belgrade Community Center Board, as well as the Bylaw Festival, correct? We've never been asked by them to defer anything as it relates to operating costs associated to running the facilities that they operate that are owned by the municipality. The only thing that I recall is that Blythe Festival asked if they could reallocate the $15,000 that we were giving them as it relates to advertising that they could use in other purposes so that they could continue to carry on. And I don't recall anything from the Blythe Center or the Belgrade Community Center Board as it relates to changing. So I just want to ask, this would be different than those two other committees, correct?
Through you, your worship, not exactly, Councillor Sipe. So the Blythe Festival came forward and asked for a financial contribution. Okay, and what staff were able to work out with them was that we contribute $15,000 to the Blythe Festival on an annual basis for promotion and for a sponsorship of Municipal Night. The Blythe Festival was closed, so we would not be required to make that donation to them. So what we did instead was we said, okay, we understand you're in a bit of a situation here. We will contribute like we normally do, and you can use that money to offset your other operational expenses. And in terms of the Belgrade Community Center, as you guys, as council, sorry, I was a little bit too familiar there, as council may recall, we just approved that agreement with them. The agreement with Belgrade Community Center is a bit different. They did not ask for any type of donation due to COVID-19 toward their operations, but they were closed, just like our other centers and things. And they had their agreement requires them to pay in rent for the use of that facility. And then the township contributes X amount, I'll say, contributes back to them an amount that covers not only that rent, but more than that rent, and an additional amount for the operations, the capital project. I can speak to the specific amounts if the CAO thinks it's appropriate, but
no,
that's the difference. And in this particular situation, there's no funding. We do not provide funding to the Columbus Center for their operations. Each of the agreements we have is different in terms of what the Blythe Festival has with us in comparison to Belgrade, in comparison to the Columbus Center. None of the agreements speak to the overall deficit of the buildings or anything like that. So.
I'm gonna let Kevin go first. Oh, actually, Dwayne would like to jump in there too, and then I'm gonna go to Kevin. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Sure. Thanks, Your Worship. And I don't want to get into a splitting hairs, but I think just going back to the Blythe Festival situation, as I recall, the Blythe Festival had put out basically looking for supporters. They had put out a call for, needing financial support. And that again was brought to council. So just in terms of my recollection is that the festival didn't specifically make a request of the township. They made a request to the community, and that generated a discussion with council. And then that led into the discussion with the festival, resulting in, as Vicky's indicated, in terms of reallocating that money. So I don't want to split hairs, but I don't think they specifically came to council, but I could be wrong. I stand to be corrected.
Thank you, Dwayne. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. I'm not too sure how far down the rabbit hole we want to go with this tonight, but I do take issue with the request coming through from the staff or from the municipal or staff to council that included the connection between the arena in Belgrade and the theater in Blythe, and the request that's coming forward from the Columbus Center. I disagree. They are totally different organizations. They are totally different managed. Let me use that word there. And I think we're forgetting the old adage about having a separation between church and state here. You've mentioned that the center had an arm's length separation from the Knights of Columbus as an organization, but in your document here you do refer to them as the Knights, and I did look up on the Ontario Knights of Columbus website on their what would you call their bylaws, their rules, and their code of conduct, and it is right in the code of conduct that they cannot be separated from one another. You cannot propose yourself to use any name or likeness unless you agree to conduct yourself by the codes and the requirements of the organization of Knights of Columbus. So, and that would put them as a religious organization versus a community organization that has full involvement of everyone, not to a specific group or gender. And as a municipality, we cannot go down that path of using taxpayers' dollars to fund only an organization that only caters to a certain amount of the. Go ahead, Vic, if you'd like to jump in here.
Your Worship, is that okay?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. We do have Bo Riegling on the line here too, he was actually one of the ones who pointed it out to me about that it is separate, the two organizations there. For council's information, I have been discovering more and more about this center and how it operates and things as we go. I question things when, for instance, the agreement does not say it's with the Knights of Columbus. It says it's with the Wingham Community Center, or the Wingham Columbus Center, right? And I always wondered why, and that's because they are separate. And the board of directors for the Columbus Center is open to the public. It's not, yes, it's open to the public, and so anyone can be a member. It's not restricted to Knights and things. It's no different than another type of organization.
I want
a
to,
nonprofit. It is a nonprofit organization and things, so.
I just, well, because I'm gonna jump in there. So I'm not sure where everybody gets their information from, but I can tell you that this year, in the toughest year we've had in years, the Knights of Columbus donated, and I can yell at the wife right now, she's over in the bedroom, but I believe it was $2,800 to the public school system to their food share program. They have nothing to do with the Knights of Columbus, and they've got nothing to do with the Catholic Church. Also, they donated to the Catholic school too, because the person that runs the school, I just went blank on it. My wife's been doing it for 35 years. The principal of the Catholic school was there. There was no religion involved. It was let's all help each other. And again, I'm not part of too many organizations. This is probably the only one I'm part of. But I do know that happened, and just Kev, just so you know that maybe in the old days or maybe some places in the world they do, but here in North Huron, they called my wife up and they said, we don't have much this year. We have given in previous years, but we're still going to give. And I don't understand what Vicky's talking about, the distinction between the two, and maybe Mr. Wrigley wouldn't mind jumping in and talking about it. But I do know that hungry children, and there is no boundary when it comes to helping each other. Having said that, you know, we have to seriously look at what we're doing for them, because we could have a lot of people wanting money, and we are getting hit hard financially too as a community, as a council, on what we can do and how much we can help out. So if Mr. Wrigley is present, I would like him to speak to this if he can. Are you there, sir? Or maybe we lost him too. Okay.
So he is here on the video call. And so the mic is muted.
Here he is.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Okay. Okay. With council's permission, I would like him to speak to this. Go ahead, Mr. Wrigley.
I was just asked to attend to make sure that I could demonstrate if there was a decline in the year. Year to date, which runs from April 1st until the end of October, is down 34.99%. The only source of income that the Columbus Center has generated since COVID has been Sue's frozen meals that she bakes and sells, and a small amount of rental income. I will speak to the fact that there is a distinct difference between the Columbus Center and the Knights of Columbus. The Columbus Center is an incorporated, not-for-profit business. I do understand that the majority, if not all, of the board of directors are members of the Knights of Columbus. That I don't think has been done by intention, done more by the fact that there's not that many people that seem to want to come once a month to sit in a meeting as to how they can volunteer at the Columbus Center, generate income to therefore put that income back into the community. There seems to be some misconception that the Knights of Columbus somehow line their pockets through the Columbus Center. And I don't think in whatever time is allowed tonight that misconception will change. But there is a distinct difference. I was never one to say that we should be asking for the rent to be forgiven or deferred or wiped out. I think that the reason that it even came up is because currently there is not the funds to pay the rent, period. So there are a couple options. We could force that issue and see where that leaves us in a few months. Or we can try to work together on this between the Columbus Center and the town as to how that gets paid We have looked into the rent subsidy that was announced by the government. There seems to be some confusion as to what of the payment is rent, pledge, and utility costs, which I spoke to Vicky that we would need to get that figured out before we could determine how much of it could actually be applied for under this rent subsidy. And it was my suggestion that if the Columbus Center is successful in getting rent subsidy, that money would then be transferred through to the town.
And no, I'm going to disagree with you. I think a few of us sitting here did learn a little bit tonight. And according to my wife, if you learn something every day, it's a good thing. So Kevin, you've got your hand up. I'm going to go back to you, Kevin.
Yeah, just curious if he would inform you who, what organization they get their insurance through for liability and such. Do they use the Knights insurance as an organization?
I'm going to let Vicky go to that, answer that one.
Through your worship, I may be sticking my neck out here a little bit, but I'm not really sure why that's even an issue here. That's really their private.
You can only get the insurance if you're a member, if your organization is derivated through the Knights of Columbus. You have to be a member in an organization to get the insurance, and they have $100 billion in insurable life and $24 billion in assets. So
Point of order, Reeve.
Councillor Faulkner, that's not really pertinent though in the situation. And I understand that there's, sorry.
I'm going to bring this conversation.
It's not a religious thing.
I'm going, Kevin.
Point of order.
I'm going to bring this conversation back to the request we have on the table. I think we're all getting a little off track, and I apologize if I started that by talking about the school. So let's go back to business at hand. There's a request on the table for permission, and we can defer, we can forgive, we can say no, everything has to stay as usual. I'd like to bring that back to the table. So I hear from councillors on that.
And Reeve Bailey, if I can just provide some clarity here as to the direction staff need. So you'll see in the draft motion that was there, the first point is staff are seeking direction regarding the $17,029 shortfall of the loss of revenue for the Columbus Center in 2020. And the second piece to that is staff are seeking direction regarding the $10,000 annual contribution made by the Wingham Columbus Center towards the overall deficit. So, and maybe the Director of Recreation knows the approach that she would like to use, but whether it's beneficial to address things one and then the other, or group it all as one. But I guess those are the two things that council needs to make a decision on.
Having heard that, I'm going to ask Vicky to address that. Thank you.
So through you, your worship, just to be clear, the Columbus Center was only asking to work with us on that. So as staff, we were trying to figure out how to help them in this situation. So they did not ask that the fee be waived or anything like that. They just need our support in some way. And Councillor Palmer may speak to that too, because he was at the meeting. In terms of the recommendation, I had put in there about the overall deficit that maybe we consider waiving that portion of it. It was just an idea I threw out there in terms of, an option for us to consider. And that's totally up to council again to determine.
Thank you very much, Vicky. I'm going to go over to Councillor Palmer. Yes, Councillor Palmer. You were at the meeting. You had the conversations. You are a liaison. Can you please speak to this? And if you can.
Yeah, the group, it was a good conversation that we had, and they're obviously short, and it's not their fault, like many other groups too, I suppose. But anyways, they're just putting their hand out, not the hand out for money, but what can we do? And so we have some funding left from that 138 fund that we received from the government, so it could be covered. Or we can cut it in half and cover part of it and then defer the other part just to show that we're helping and it puts some responsibility back on them. That's for this year, 21, and we don't know what's going to happen there. So we just hope that things get better. But that's where I see, and it's not, it would be a one-time affair. Like we'd have to make sure that it's not, we're not setting a precedence. That would be probably the main thing. But in any event, we have a shortfall ourselves. Like they have a shortfall, well, in turn, we have that shortfall. So how do we cover our shortfall? That's one way of looking at the situation. And the money is there from that other fund. You know, they're a community group. In a way, we're partners. We own the building, but they operate it and we rely on them. Their community, they work for the community, for the betterment. And if it gets comes to shove, they'll leave. That's a business part of it. They'd leave. They can't afford it. So then what do we do? Well, you know, we have to hire staff. It's going to be a cost and a fortune. So a lot of times, instead of evicting somebody, if it's a farmer or a house, because a mortgage isn't being paid, you work with them and keep them going because the years will improve. That's how we look at it. So I'd recommend that we cover the shortfall with the funding that's left over. And write it in that it is not we're not setting a precedence.
Just before we go any further, I'm not sure we could use that money for that. I haven't looked in. Kevin, would you please speak now, please? Thank you.
Yes, I would like to see something also added to that motion if we go ahead with the any comfort or monetary changes to the non-charitable or nonprofit charitable organization, that we extend this offer to all and any nonprofit organization in North Huron. So we're not singling out one particular group. I'm sure there's church groups that require money. I'm sure all the nonprofits would be lined up at a steady pace out the door for since we're handing out the money. So that's all. Just that we include everyone.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying there, Kevin. Is we would be able to budget for it because, like you said, everybody's going to line up, and we don't know what everybody is. I'm going to go Chris, and then I'm going to go over to Paul.
It would be nice if we could do that, Councillor Faulkner, but it's not the same thing. This group operates one of our buildings. The other groups don't. You know, sure, they have a job to play in the community, but this group, the Knights of Columbus, they operate our building. It's totally different.
They lease through your reeve. They lease the building with a contract, so they can manage and accept and not accept whoever they want to rent to and don't want to rent to, or what they want to do with the building. They can follow their own, as any other organization could. It's no different than the Masons having a hall and wanting us to participate. And if they had rented one of our halls to use for their program, it's just I'm just saying. I just want to see that make sure that we have a separation between the church and state. If they're nonprofit, they're nonprofit. I agree with that. I would support the nonprofit, but I would support every nonprofit. I'm not going to single out any one in particular. I agree with that. I appreciate what they're doing. I'm not trying to come off that way. I'm just coming that they're a distinct group leasing the building from the municipality. We have no other commitments from them other than they're a paying renter.
I'm going to hand it
Yeah,
over.
that makes them
Oh,
important.
no, Chris, Paul had his hand up, please.
Yes, through you, Reeve. I understand the Columbus Center is having challenges, just like many others in North Huron. The shortfall of the Knights of Columbus is not the responsibility of the North Huron taxpayers. I'd like to see this deferred on. Thank you.
Carson, just help me out here. When somebody defers, do we stop talking about it, or is that a tabling motion?
No, I'm sorry. I'm asking that the money that their charges will come up down the road.
Yeah.
That they pay. That's
So I guess to answer your question, Reeve Bailey, there's a distinction between, and I guess I'm seeking clarity here. There's a distinction between deferring this agenda item, right? So you can defer this agenda item for discussion at a later date, or there's deferring the payment to be paid at a later date. And I guess I don't know exactly which one Councillor Heffer was looking towards there. So
I guess we're just at our budget meetings, and I think that's going to tell us a lot of stuff. And so take it either way you want. It
has to be one way or the other.
So I'm going to hand it over.
Yeah, so Reeve, there has been lots of discussion about what should do, and I think everybody's comments are realistic. The comment is this comment is going to affect 2021's budget. Like 2020's come and gone. 2021 is going to be the impact, because if we defer it, then those costs are going to be not hit, and then those costs are going to have to be deferred until 2021. The issue the one thing I want to question is when it talks about provide direction to council to staff as regards to the 17,029 shortfall of revenue loss. I need somebody to clarify to me is that is a utility payment. Is that correct? Like, is that really what they pay us for utilities, and they also pay us a 10,000 annual contribution to the overall deficit of the recreation center. So
I'm going to have Trevor. I'm going to have Vicky speak to that first, and then we're going to continue on with you. Go ahead, Vicky, because she's got her hand waving away here. Go ahead, Vicky.
Through you, Reeve Bailey, to Deputy Reeve Sype. That's what we're talking about. So the way that the agreement is set up, or the way the whole center is set up, is that hydro is portioned out because we only have one hydro meter for the entire building. And everything is portioned out by a percentage basis. I think so. They pay a percentage of the overall bill, or the bill for the overall utilities or the electricity for the building and things. And then they pay for the water and sewer, and they and pay a portion of the natural gas for heating and things. And then there's the $10,000 contribution that they make toward the deficit of the overall building.
So I just want to reiterate then is if the 17,029 is payment to us for hydro or utility costs, whatever, we've paid our money. The hydro bills are paid. This is just a reimbursement of fees that the municipality has already paid.
Yeah.
And the $10,000 is just a contribution of deficit of costs that we've already paid. So by deferring this money to 2021, or when the Columbus Center comes back to full operations, we haven't changed anything from it relates to the budget, because only thing we've changed is the fact that we didn't collect that money in 2020. We're going to potentially collect it in 2021 or 2022. My only concern would be whatever we commit to as a council, that is an appendix in the agreement, so that they acknowledge on themselves that, you know, we've deferred it or we've taken whatever, and that those fees are due at a future date. It's not forgiven. It's, you need it now, you know, owe 10,000 in 2021, but you also owe 2020's 10,000, as well as 17,000 for the expenses in 2020. You also owe whatever it was in 2021. So I just want to ensure that whatever we agree to, that is an appendix in the agreement, so both the municipality acknowledges it by bylaw, and the Wingham Columbus Center board acknowledges it during their agreement.
I'm going to hand it back over to Kevin. He had his hand up. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Reeve. I just wonder if we could, if council could be allowed to have a copy of the agreement on the building itself, because that was formed and agreed to prior to amalgamation, and it was carried out. You're shaking your head, Becky. The building was built before.
Yeah. So we're going to let Kevin. We're going to let Vicky answer that.
Through you, your worship. So we just entered into a new lease agreement with them. The lease agreement has changed over the years based on the terms of council and things. So this council entered into a new lease agreement with them, and I believe it was in April of 2019 would have been the time frame for that.
I was just curious to the they have any financial reasoning to have their the naming of the building. There must be something more than just a lease agreement if they're allowed to call the building a building, like their own building. Just was curious. I would like to see the current lease agreement. That's all. I would just like to, as we're talking, I don't know what's in it and how it pertains to anything. So
okay, I'm jumping right now, and I'm going to suggest that there's more information needed, further talks needed on this subject. I have information in front of us that Kevin's requesting. He is a duly appointed counselor. I'm going to suggest that there's no motion on the floor that I'm aware of. I would like a motion to defer this to another date, and so that conversations and Kevin can get the information, and counselors can have all the same information and come back. I think we learned a lot between all of us. It is a lease. We didn't know it was a lease. They do help different people. I didn't understand the difference between the Columbus Center and the Knights of Columbus. I learned that. Bo was good enough to bring some information forward. I think at this point in time, this has got a little heated. I think we should just have this come back to council at another time with the discussions. And anybody have problems with that? Trev? Yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
The only concern about deferring is that before we defer, that staff have every question or comment that they need in order to, so this doesn't get deferred the next month or next quarter or whatever. All the information is brought forward so that we can make a decision on the next council meeting for whatever decision we're going to make.
So follow up what Deputy Reeves said. I would agree to that, that if you have any questions, make sure you send them into I think Dwayne or Vicky, whichever you feel it should go to. It's your staff. And I think we should bring this back to the next council meeting. As Deputy Reeves said, this is another one of the hard decisions we're going to have to make. You know, we've already had Morris Turnberry telling us they're not paying for their share either. So we're getting ourselves into a financial bind here, and we may have to close one of our arenas whether we like it or not, simply because people weren't paying. So we need to really look at this from all angles. With council's permission, I would say that we defer this till the next council meeting, and all questions, you know, Kevin, sit down with Vicky, Chris, whoever else wants to sit down, Paul, whoever, sit down or send your questions in, and let's get them out in the open at the next council meeting, and we'll answer them all and move forward. We have to make a decision. We just can't let it hang.
So Reeve Bailey, if I can just seek some clarity here. So Deputy Reeve Snipe also mentioned that any deferral approach put forward, he would like to see incorporated in an amendment to that agreement. So I'm wondering if it's beneficial for when this comes back to council, we would include the existing agreement, and then what a potential deferral payment plan that could be included as a schedule could look like. And that would allow for some more targeted discussion, I would say, as to, so if that's beneficial, we could certainly capture that in the motion.
I think for the next meeting, I'd like to see options on the table, whether we're going to defer, whether we're going to forgive, whether we're going to do nothing at all. I want everything on the table, and I want to move forward as a team. And we'll do it by stroking off what's good and what's not, and reasons why not. Okay? Everybody okay with that? Trevor? Go ahead, Trevor. You're muted, Trevor. Go ahead.
I will move a motion to defer.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? I have Paul seconding. All in favor? Oh, sorry.
Oh, comments.
And that would need to be a recorded vote as well.
Just a second, Carson. Chris would like to talk.
I understand where this is coming from, but I don't know if there's going to be that much more new information. It'll just be the same boat we're in. We're going to talk about the same things. Same stuff's going to come up. We'll just tell you the same things. Cal have a bee under his bonnet. Like,
okay,
that's what's going to happen. There's not going to be a whole lot of difference. And it doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for those comments. We will, the motion on the floor is to table it for all information to come forward, and we'll have a further discussion and make a decision at the next council meeting. Okay, I'll go ahead, Trevor.
I do want to mention, this is a motion on the table. It can be defeated.
Mm-hmm.
And then a motion can be made by any other councillor to commit to whatever else requests. So I'm just saying that we haven't gone anywhere yet, So I'm making the motion to defer to get all the information that people are having questions about. So that's all I'm saying. It can be defeated just like any other motion.
Yeah. So it's a simple motion. It is deferred till the next information, and everybody knows that you're to go to whether Wayne, Vicky, or Carson, have conversations, and the next council meeting will be prepared with better prepared with information and have this discussion. I have a mover. I have a seconder. All in favor?
So, Your Worship, so I guess just back things up here. So what I can do is I'll read the draft motion here to make sure it's capturing what the intent is. I don't know if someone could repeat or maybe I'll read it first, and then I didn't capture who the mover and seconder is, so we'll just back up a little.
Yep.
So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report prepared by the Director of Recreation and Community Services dated January 11th, 2021 regarding the request for support from the Wingham Columbus Center for information purposes, and further that the Council hereby directs staff to defer the request for support from the Wingham Columbus Center to the February 1st, 2021 meeting so that a copy of the current agreement can be circulated and potential options be presented.
Sweet.
So I'm not sure who you had for a movers, or if
I believe it was Trevor and Paul seconded. You guys are okay with that change? That's what you wanted? Great, thank you.
Okay, so this will be a recorded vote. So Deputy Reeve Sype.
Yes.
Councillor Falconer.
Yes.
Councillor Heffer.
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer.
No.
Councillor McBurney.
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that vote carries 6-1 with the no being Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very kindly. Okay, let's move on to public 7.5, no reports from the fire department. 7.6, building department. That the 2021-2 building department 2020 year-end summary report. That the council of the township of North Huron hereby receives the building department 2020 for purposes. Do I have a mover? I have Anita moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Mr. Heffer seconding. Okay, it's open for questions or comments.
So through your worship, Kirk is on the line here, and I believe he has a few comments noted that of the report to make to council.
My apologies, Kirk, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, council. Really brief on the building department summary year-end report. The first page really provides to council a description of the type of projects that would be categorized in the following chart on page 2. For purposes of discussion, we'll just mainly look at the total volume for each chart, highlighted in gray. Permit numbers are holding steady for 2020 at 102 permits issued. I do note the previous years there for council going back to 2015 for comparison purposes. Permit fees collected this year at 130,763, and you'll notice that those are going strong over the previous years as well. And the final chart for value of construction for projects within the municipality at 12,280,000, which is very similar to last year. We are slightly less in permits, so that would be reflective to the value of construction. I did do a quick calculation on new construction projects, square footage calculation, and this year we were 30,000 square feet less than last year. And I think that's all I do have to report this report from the council.
Thank you very much, Kirk. Again, it was a very busy year, very, very busy year. We have a lot on the go. We have a lot coming up this one year. Pace with everything Kirk said, that we did get hit with COVID-19 this year that slowed a few things down, closed a few shops up. We definitely all felt it, although moved right along. Not seeing any. Carson, do I have a mover and seconder? I forget.
Yes, you do, but your video cut out there too, Reeve Bailey, so I'm not entirely sure whether council heard what you're saying, but I think you opened it up for questions or comments if there were any.
I did. Seeing it. All I had to say there was it was a great year. It was not right along. Okay. Not seeing any, I call the motion. All in favor? Oh, no, Carson.
Recorded. So thank you, Reeve Bailey. So it'll be a recorded vote. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the Building Department 2020 year-end summary report for information purposes. So Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
Councillor Heffer?
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterstone? Councillor Palmer?
Yes.
Councillor McBurney?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight?
Yes.
And Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Child Care Department, we have no reports. CAO, we have no reports. Correspondence, we have none. Council reports, Reeves activity report. I'm going to take a few minutes. I'm going to read a little statement that I prepared. From my chair, it's where we've been and where I think we should go. And some of this stuff we have not talked about, but again, from my chair, where we've been and where I think we should be going, and it's as we move forward. I'd like to reflect a little on our first year, look over the next 2 years. The council staff, we came together quickly with common goals, differing but agreeable ways to achieve them. Ability to work together. We've achieved several of the goals in our strategic plan that was put together with a community of community participation. Goals and actions, we have achieved 4 of the 7 goals. 5 goals. Governance and modernization, we have achieved 3 of the 7 goals. Infrastructure, 1 of the 4 priorities have been achieved. Achieved 3 of the 8 goals. In our first 2 years, we've created unprecedented growth in housing for North Huron, with more in the hopper. We, North Huron Council and staff, Bruce, Morris Turnberry, as well as the county, our provincial and federal counterparts, Lisa Thompson and Ben Lobb, with other concerned and helpful people and groups, created the Labor Shortage Group to help North Huron and its surrounding municipalities' industry gain valuable and needed staff to support their facilities. We developed a method to bring newcomers to North Huron, and our community group we did all this while having a global pandemic throw at us, and it has taken us to our knees, but we are holding our own and moving forward. For this year, I see a need to continue the great new revenue streams, push hard on new residential developments, and now it is time for North Huron to develop its own industrial commercial land strategy. We have started the sale of land owned by North Huron that is located in Morris Turnberry, and we need to invest the proceeds of this land in East Wawanosh for commercial, industrial, and create tax relief for all of North Huron, no longer spending our tax dollars and water reserve money to benefit other surrounding communities that give North Huron no tax relief, and there's no investment. No business can run that way. This sitting council has many conversations ahead as we have behind us. This council, this staff, that we're at the right time for the hard work. And I want to thank everyone for the cooperation. Thank you. We're going to move on now to council member reports. Reports in any committee meetings or anything going on. Is there anyone? Not seeing any. We will move on to comments by members. Is there anyone that around us? Tonight. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Through you, Reeve. I couldn't hear all what you said there on your message there. They're going in and out on my, maybe I just had poor connection. But I just wondered, is this the right place? I was just wondering if we could have maybe a progress report about the Wingham Trailer Park, maybe at our next meeting. I don't know if this is the right place to ask for that. I just do that with Blaine.
Through your worship, to answer Councillor Heffer's questions, and you touched on it as well with going through the strategic plan. So as part of the next budget meeting, Dwayne actually does a presentation on the status of every item in that strategic plan and an update in comparison to the budget. And in that, there's content about the Wingham Trailer Park, right? So we can certainly incorporate that as well at the budget meeting on January 22nd.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any. Notice of motion request from Councillor Palmer. The Council of Township here and hereby revoke the surplus property declared for the East Wawanosh Public Works property enacted by Res M3/18 as the property is no longer surplus to the municipality's needs. So that one's going to be coming up. I believe that means this one's coming up at the next council meeting.
That's correct, your worship.
Thank you. And Chris, did you want to speak to it a bit or wait for the presentation?
So he will discuss that at the next meeting. Basically, the process now is Councillor Palmer is giving notice that this will be a topic for discussion at the next meeting.
Okay, is that good, Chris? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay, bylaws. Bylaw 1- authorize the Reeve clerk to sign on the council an agreement between the Corporation of Township of North Huron and Monty Brown Planning Consultant Limited for the purpose of preparation of the Parks and Recreation and Culture Plan for the Township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? Almost like I did something wrong there. Anita's moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Paul seconding. All in favor?
Recorded vote, your worship.
Good vote. You're here.
So Reeve Bailey read the motion there. So Councillor Falconer?
Yes.
Counselor Heifer,
Yes.
Counselor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Counselor Palmer,
Yes.
Counselor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 7-0.
thank you. Being a bylaw, sorry guys, I just saw Chris had his hand up. Being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 82-208-200 but North for a zoning bylaw amendment as it applies to Block E registration 173 as in 22R1777 Part 3 and 4 Blythe Township of North Huron, which is actually 692 Queen Street. Do I have a mover? Do I have a mover? I have Deputy Reeve Sight. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Heifer. Okay, Carson.
So Counselor Heifer, Counselor Van Hittersum, Counselor Palmer. Oh, Counselor Palmer, I think you're muted.
Yes.
Counselor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight, Counselor Falconer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that carries 7-0.
Okay. Bylaw number 03-2021, being a bylaw to authorize a site plan control between Corporation Township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? Christopher moving, and I have Rick seconding. Okay. Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Counselor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Counselor Palmer,
Yes.
Counselor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight, Counselor Falconer,
Yes.
Counselor Heifer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Now, next budget meeting will be held on Friday, January 22nd, 2021 at 9 a.m. through electronic participation. The next regular council will be held on Monday, February 1st, 2021 at 6 p.m. through electronic participation unless notified otherwise. The next museum committee meeting will be held on Thursday, January 14th, 2021 at 2 p.m. through electronic participation. The next economic Development and Recovery Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, January 21st, 2021 at 2 p.m. The next meeting will be held on Thursday, January 14th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. through electronic participation. And the next BIA meeting will be held on Thursday, January 28th, 2021 at 8 a.m. through electronic participation. Other business. Is there any other business anybody would like to speak to? Not seeing it. I have tonight confirmation of conformatory bylaw. Bylaw number 04-2021, being a bylaw of the Township of North Huron to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by the Council of the Township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? Rick moves first and Kevin seconds.
Counselor Palmer,
Yes.
Counselor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight, Counselor Falconer,
Yes.
Counselor Heifer,
Yes.
Counselor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So the confirmatory bylaw carries 7-0.
Adjournment that the Council of the Township of North Huron agrees that there before council, the meeting is hereby at 8:22 p.m. Do I have a mover? Slow tonight, guys. I have Kevin. Do I have a seconder? I have Anita. Okay, Carson, your last call. Carson, you're muted.
Carson, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight, Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Safe, everyone. We shall talk another day. Thank you.
Yeah. Good night.